Kid of Arcadia. Chapter 10. I was their poison sponge. The leaves were finally full that Friday after the hell I'd been put through that week, and there was a newfound shade of green in the grass by the end of it. As school let out, sometimes I also met with this other kid called Spence behind the building to see what kind of deal he could get me on his brown bag scripts, but he never had anything good. Nothing that could really take the edge off like Klonopin. It was at the same spot Dace and I used to share smokes, out of the way and out of sight. I remember Spence being spent of scripts that afternoon and how disappointed I was about it when the two of us split. I knew I'd be sick that night without something to chill me out. From there I turned from the shadows and trotted out to where the parking lot spread before me, bustling with kids on the split from the school. Even in all the commotion I could still pick out Kelly waiting for me behind one of the parked cars on the other end, near the bus depot. She sat Indian style by the boarded fence in the grass with her own bag in her lap, so I loosened the straps on mine and stepped down the curb in her direction. I must have been out of my mind because what I did that day was the last thing I ever wanted to do. I winged my pack at the ground beside her when I drew near and sat on it, not wanting to look like I was as scared as I was. "Whoa, what's up with you?" she asked. "Nothing. But can I ask you something kind of personal? But don't freak out or anything," I said. "Why would I?" she asked. I gulped. "You just have to answer me. You don't have to know why I asked this or what it's about, but, I said, tripping over all the wrong words in my mind. "Have you ever heard of these guys called chicken hawks?" "No," she asked. "They're people who screw around with weaker people, like one of those big hawks that beats up on little birds. You know those hawks? What do you think about someone who does that, someone who hurts?" I asked. That's horrible and they should go to jail." "Why are you asking me about this?" she asked. "Well, what if they didn't mean to do it and they're really, really sorry about it? What should they do now?" "Well, it doesn't matter how sorry they are, they should still go to jail. That's wrong," she said. "Well, what about them? What if they're sorry and won't do it again? What if they're not being given a second chance to be better? What should they do?" I begged. "Does this have to do with what Dace did to me? If this has to do with what Dace did to me, you know I don't want to talk about that because I asked you not to talk about it. And I don't know why you're making excuses for him right now. He's a nutcase, okay? That's what I think," she said. "Okay, well, see you around then." I stood up to get as far away from her as possible, but she came up with me. "Wait, what is this really about?" she asked. "Nothing." I didn't want to bother her with my shit. "Then what's wrong? You can tell me." "Nothing." "Are you sure?" I nodded. "You don't look so good." "I'm just a little sick, I guess. I don't feel good, I mean," I said, stumbling back from her, feeling nauseous. "Are we going to walk today?" she asked. I didn't see anything. I was just so hot-flashed, so sick. I desperately needed someone to talk to, and she wasn't it. I just needed to talk to someone who'd understand. "That's a no, then." "Okay, see ya," she said. She pushed her way past me and jogged out across the parking lot, and I watched her figure shrink down in the distance. At first I just wanted to tell her sorry and go with her as always, but it never made it past my lips. So that Friday was the last time I ever saw her outside my dreams. I felt so many things that afternoon, but regret over her wasn't one of them. That came later in the passenger seat of Dad's hatchback that rainy weekend when Dad and I were returning from the thrift store with a bag of nice new clothes I'd never wear. "Damn it, now you got me back on these things," he said from the driver's side on the way back, one hand on the wheel and the other down his pocket. He managed to single-handedly wriggle up a tiny box of cigarettes, flip it open, and pluck one out with his lips. Then he tossed the box in my lap in the passenger seat. Who was he kidding? He was still a pro at it. "I quit when Eliot was born. I wasn't even this nervous then, but I guess I got a good reason to open up my Bible again," he sputtered, the cigarette dangling in his mouth as he lit it with a lighter from the dashboard. "So can I ask you why again? Why you didn't punish me? I'm the one you're mad at. Why'd you have to go and punish my fucking kid? What'd he do to you? He did nothing to you, you fucking little shit." With the smoke trailing on the ceiling, he rolled the window down, and all the hot air sucked out like he'd busted the space lock or blown out a window on an airplane. The highway's rainy tire hiss and whipping wind filled the car and made conversation impossible. He was just too upset to really talk about it, but that didn't stop him from hammering it in. "Hey, tough guy, I'm talking to you. Why couldn't you just be nice to him, Talk to me," he barked again. Sitting there was like waking up from an angry dream. That still happens to me a lot. One minute you're behind your head, getting into it with someone you think should love you, someone you depend on, and the next a ray of sunlight sticks a fork in your eye and you're awake. You want to go give that person hell. Your synapses are so screwed they can't tell the difference for a second. But then you realize you got nothing against them in real life. That's what it felt like. I sat in the seat clutching my elbows and rubbing my goosebumps. My red sweatshirt wasn't doing me any good, and the elastics around the sleeves were robbing blood to my arms. The seatbelt dug into my neck, but I didn't mind. Dad flicked the cigarette outside, rolled the window up, and noticed I was shivering. It was an odd day for the spring, chillier than usual. "Jared, talk to me, bud. Are you okay?" he asked again in a friendlier tone, his eyes on the highway. I didn't know how to answer him anymore. I suppose I was cold. Damn it, I thought. The rain had to ruin the weekend. If I knew it was going to rain, I would have put my windbreaker on, but I still had it on the rack back at home. Tears formed for some reason when I thought about how that fleece would feel on my upper arms. Dad tried to ruffle my hair to get my attention, but all I could think about was Broder, and how he'd touch me. "What's wrong, bud? Talk to—" "It's this fucking seatbelt, Dad!" I tugged it off my neck and lowered it under my armpit where it was comfortable. When we arrived home, I dodged to my room and slipped into my windbreaker, then plodded back down from the loft, threw myself on the couch, and watched some basketball game I didn't care about for a half hour, thinking more about the talks I'd had with Kelly and Dad and about Broder. I fell asleep safe and sweating in the cushion springs before it ended. The nausea was taking over. I needed my script and it wasn't there. "Why are you wearing that in the house?" Mom asked. She sat next to me, pitching a thermometer as my head pounded and I struggled to open my eyes. Now the television was off, the windows were black, and shadows drove across the carpet in the dim room. My forehead felt frosted with a spray of sweat. Every thought was about Broder and the lapse, and the blood. She stuck the device in and then yanked it out. "Well, you're not high," she joked. I guess she only meant my temp. I just shivered, hoping she wouldn't notice. "Tell me something, my little guy," she whispered. "Who won the game?" I asked back. She didn't know. Eliot's issues became very real to me over dinner later that night. I remember the hanging stained glass light over the table swinging back and forth in the gentle evening breeze, making the shadows lapse and draw like we were in the hull of a ship. I remember the bills, newspapers, Mom's books, and all the empty beer bottles packing the shelves and table space, leaving me lodged in that stuffy, cramped chaos we called the kitchen. That night breaths were short and legs tucked in. My parents sat on opposite ends of the table around a meal of whatever 2-minute box dinner we had after hammering themselves senseless on the bottles. I was stuck between them. "Eliot, get down here," Dad yelled. For yet another unknown reason, the boy was slower than ever coming down for dinner, but his absence at the table gave my drunk Mom and Dad time to bicker in ways they wouldn't have been able to get away with had he shown his face, so they weren't really in any hurry. They never wanted to talk about his problems directly. They'd been pissed at me for putting a hole in the wall back up in the bedroom with a tossed chair that afternoon. I think it was just an accident, but in that house nothing was anymore. Dad blew it all out of proportion like I'd meant to do it, because I'm sure he'd had it with me. Maybe he was right. Maybe I did everything on purpose. "It's not a big deal. Everything's fucked anyways, right?" I said, spinning my fork. Mom slammed her fist down and the utensils jumped. "Okay, you win. Do whatever the hell you want. I'm sure you'll get parents who won't give a damn, just like you." "You're doing it again," Dad butt in, shaking. "Don't start, man," she said. "You did this to him for 5 fucking years. You let him walk all over you, so what do you expect? He's why they're on our case to begin with. Now it's screwing us." "What happened to putting it in the past, man?" "Yeah, but now it's coming back to bite us. Letting him do this and then giving him what he wants. Figure it out." Who's letting him get away with any of that shit? You maybe, not me." Girl, no. That woman looks at her whole situation and sees what she's been told are 2 ex-junkies who let their fucking tough guy, spoiled brat, beat up on a sad little kid. Dad looked right at me. "So now I spoiled him while you got to run off and become some born-again holy rural churchman. Oh, I get it. That's your story, right? You're the good guy who rescued us." She banged the table again and lay back in her chair. No, don't put words in my mouth. All I'm saying here is we shouldn't let him rule our lives, okay? He does what we tell him to do, and you know why? Because we're in charge, not him. Sorry, girl. Time to grow up now. You're saying the only reason your kid's got issues is because I fucked my kid up. Are you serious? What do you mean, your kid? You want to take all the credit for this little shit? Fine, go ahead. Take him. Sorry I went to work and got you and him out of that hellhole, okay? I said it. I'm sorry. Now go run back to your dad and tell him I hurt you all over again. Go ahead. There's nothing they love more than threatening my life. So just forget about all this and let them fucking kill me this time. Please. Forget what? All this? Man, why didn't you just stop fucking around when you already had a kid? Oh, here's that big performance again, he cut in, his mouth full. Over and over again. Remember, I was there for him. You threw me out, remember? That's how it happened, and I was still there for him. You were the one who never brought him to see me. That was all you, not me. Because you were fucking around, man, and chasing twat with some junkie, that's why. You think I want my kid around that? So yes, he's my kid, because you hurt the shit out of me. Doesn't that mean anything to you? Mom was shaking. She's Eliot's mother, okay? At least respect that. And what did you do? Throw me out just to come crawling back when I had money? You weren't doing anything but living off your parents, and you only stayed in that shithole to make me feel guilty, like you couldn't move out. Oh, poor you. I was doing fine. You were begging me to run on back, not the other way around, remember? Maybe because I wanted to see my son too, Dad replied. You just said you'd give him up again. Give me a break, man, she said, raising her hand to her head. I didn't mean it. You never mean it, she sneered. Dad stood up in a burst of rage like he was going to turn the table over, but then collected himself quickly and sat back down. He looked toward the wall. I was leaning on the table with my head down, trying to take in this assault without breaking into tears or breaking something else. That's when Eliot slowly stepped into the kitchen with his white tube socks pulled up his arms, my belt around his chest, and my old skate helmet still tied around his head. He sat at the table to the bewilderment of all three of us, and I almost busted up. It's my spacesuit, he said. Not at the dinner table. Come on, take those off. They're full of dirt, Dad demanded. I can't breathe, Daddy. Dad shot like a python, grabbing a hold of Eliot's wrists and skinning them clear of cloth in seconds. The boy stared at his bare hands, scared stiff through budding tears. I had never heard Dad raise his voice to him before, like that. I gave the kid a nod. It's okay. We're in the airlock. Don't encourage him. It's what he wants. Trust me. Dad turned and pointed to me, and that was the end of our little adventure with Eliot for the night. It only took Dad a few words to break down all the kid's defenses. The boy cracked an evil smirk, but it faded rapidly when Dad began barking demands again. Eat! You want them to think we don't feed you? Eliot picked up his fork and jabbed his food sadistically, sporting a mad grin like he was just about to murder someone. As usual, his antics went unnoticed by both my parents, who were already staring down their plates. He slumped in his chair and pulled my helmet off his head. You're fixing the hole tomorrow, Jared, Mom said. Did you hear that, tough guy? Dad asked me. Yes, sir, I shouted. Everyone jumped. Okay, guess what? I've had it with you. You go put another hole in the wall. You can tell the caseworker why you did it. I didn't work my life away getting this house back so you could ruin it. Get used to it or just get the fuck out of my life, he shouted. That really stung. That was the real him finally. Yes, sir, I shouted again, dripping tears. Knock it off, smartass. I can do it too, he hollered back, at the top of his lungs now. I stormed up to the room, stomping down hard on each step like I was trying to break through the boards. Of course, I slammed the bedroom door and threw myself on my bed. I wasn't hungry anyways. I was too nauseous. I was boiling in rage. I paid the price for not having that script. My body needed it. The dizziness took over and made the walls close in and spin, and I felt my guts surging up my throat, ready to come up. Sweat seeped up on my forehead, and I just fell down in bed, gasping for air in a spell like the kind I used to have when I was younger. I turned on my brother later in the room. It was all too easy to do. I was thinking about Broder. Eliot, what'd you tell that lady? I asked from where I lay on the bottom bunk, shaking uncontrollably. He didn't answer. He just kept crashing his cars on the tracks as if totally unaffected by the monsters he'd unleashed on us, ignoring them even as they were about to drag him off. He still had his socks rolled all the way up his arms and capped himself with my skating helmet like no one would notice how big a fool he was running around making everyone nervous like that. "Fine, don't talk to me, you fucking freak. It's not like we're real brothers anyways. You're just a fucking freak," I said. That's when he went ballistic. "I'm not a freak, you fuck! You are, you fuck!" he shouted, now revealing his true colors. Shocked to hear his small voice now using my words so freely, I blew a gasket on him worse than ever. I staggered over to his table where he kept Dad's Pulp Fiction mags, and with all the rage pent up from all those months, I tore one of them in half and threw the pieces at him. He fell on his hands and knees. "Hey, that was Daddy's!" he yelled. He reached over to pick up the pieces and tried to jigsaw puzzle them back together. "You're not crazy just because they hug you every time you act up, you know. You can be normal," I said. "You ruined it," he yelled, tears dripping down. "Now you know how I feel, freak." I fell back on my bed and turned over so I wouldn't have to see the trail of destruction behind me. Eliot started crying, whimpering and moaning on the floor back there, but I just covered my head with a pillow, and after 5 minutes of listening to that, fell asleep. And with that sleep, I basically brought everything I had known in my life to an end all around me. I woke what seemed like seconds later, and all the lights were off. When I realized what I'd done to him earlier in my crazed sickness once again, I just sighed and vowed to make it up to him in the morning. But I never got that chance. That night, my chest sank a foot into the bed on an exhale, and I stood up to leave the room. I never got to go back in. Tears began streaming down my cheeks and itching my nose when I locked myself in the bathroom that night. It turned out to be the last one I ever spent with my family for years to come. I had so much I needed to tell them, but it was too late. Soon the state had off with us. I was in the upstairs bathroom, sick as a dog and trying to throw up, when I heard the cruiser's door shut outside. And just like that, it was all over. April 27th, 1982. I was eating some birthday cake with my hands at a party. The frosting tasted so good. It was my birthday, I think, and I was happy to get cake. Then everyone was looking at me as I ate. Nobody else was, and I felt weird, so I looked, and the cake was all blood and flies. My hands were bloody and flies were crawling in my mouth. I threw up and ran out of there. Everyone laughed at me. In a dream, I was 7 years old. I was resting on Broda's bed one spring afternoon. He was 12 then. A passing cloud shot a beam of light through the narrow gap in the curtains and illuminated a strip down the middle of the dust of the room. He jumped up to run off to his upstairs bathroom and left the door open so I could hear him taking a leak from around the corner. While I waited for him to get his last bits out with me right there watching him, I just lay on his bed not knowing what was in store for me. Then he passed through the beam, and his white undershirt blinded me in it. His tight jeans were still undone and hung loosened on his hips. Cool guys do that. "What, you're not playing, kiddo?" he asked. Yeah, I'm playing," I said, raising my shirt. "Good, because I want to show you what it does." He sat on the bed and began rubbing himself right in front of me. His hair hung in front of his eyes so I couldn't see if he was enjoying it. I did like watching it, though. "See that? It makes a man out of you," he said. The experiments were always successful. Almost every afternoon in there I learned how clockwork the body is, and how just by doing something to it I could make it feel certain things. Broder only told me how to make it feel good, how to ride its roller coaster thrills and get as much bang out of it as I could. Yahoo, right? But then the final 2 years I knew him, he started going on his own wild ride down. And when he got to high school, his whole circle really started changing for good. I was soon to follow him down. It's just that we all had to make our own fun in those parts, or else life got too boring, you know? There wasn't much else to do in those parts. It's just that the world had closed in as the seasons did the changing. Images of springtime flashed before me, of kids climbing the trees, of playing wiffle ball in the backyard and tag alone with Eliot. That kid left the video arcade in a hurry sometimes. I'd crawl behind the fence with him where no one could see us, give him a baseball bat, and tell him to watch the ball. My brother couldn't hold on to anything very long without breaking it. He broke me very quickly. Sometimes the patience wasn't there, but I always let him have the moment. Everyone's dream was over for good. This is how it all ended. Maybe I hated him too much. Maybe I hated everyone. Maybe I really was sick in the head. Now that I knew what I'd done, by God, I wished I hadn't done it. Even if I ended up getting lucky, I lived the rest of my life knowing only how much I screwed everything up. And there I was, my brother's thug, my mom's curse, my dad's biggest disappointment. And to myself I was nothing but some guy's joke and another's personal plaything. And what's worse, I blame myself for it all. For everything. I would have given anything in the world to keep what I had. I would have stopped. I would have done it right from there on. But it was too late. I soaked up everyone's guilt. I gave that kid a bat all right. Then I plopped myself before him and told him to just start swinging. I got what I deserved. He never did. I'm so sorry, Eliot.